Nora Brown, welcome to twofingerbanjo.com. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, I'm so excited. Yeah, we were talking about this a little earlier, but just wanted to say it again that a lot of times people don't know about the depth of the styles of the banjo, and I'm so glad that you're raising awareness to this and helping people, uh, you know, so people don't have to be playing banjo for years to find out that there are many ways you can play it.
What's the first style of banjo that you played?
That would well, Yeah, it's an interesting question actually because when I started banjo, I was really just strumming it. It's I started on ukulele back in the day, and I sort of was interested in learning banjo, started playing the banjo ukulele, and then went on to the real banjo, but was still holding on to my ukulele past and kind of just worked out with just playing strumming chords. And I guess a little bit of a clawhammer motion, but I don't really think I was using the fifth string. So in reality, clawhammer was definitely my first the style I learned first. Yeah.
And you still play a ton of clawhammer. I love your clawhammer playing.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Yeah. It's interesting because I've heard different stories of people being like, "Yeah, I learned two finger first because that's way easier for me," and then climb. And I'm like, that always seems very backwards to me for some reason, but because the two finger style seems like something a little extra on the side, but really, it's actually a really big part of a lot of um, traditions, especially Eastern Kentucky, the Eastern Kentucky region. There's a lot of two finger going on there, I'm sure you know. And especially when I went down there, people I highly respected and loved their playing would be like, yeah, I couldn't play clawhammer for a long time and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And I want to hear about your trips to Eastern Kentucky. I spent a bunch of years in Chicago teaching at the Old Town School of Folk Music, and I taught a lot of beginners how to play the banjo. And I noticed that two finger seemed to be the easiest for most people to start with.
Yeah.
And they might still want to end up playing clawhammer, but maybe the initial motion with the claw and everything was a little difficult. But I also, like you, I played clawhammer before I ever tried two finger.
Mhm.
Um, how many years passed, do you think, before you started on the ukulele and then banjo uke and then strumming the five string and then clawhammer? At what point did you add two finger to the mix?
Um, Well, yeah, well, just quickly, I wanted to add on to what you're saying that, I do agree that two finger is easier. I do agree. And it is a nice intro to the banjo. But yeah, I would say probably a year or two, maybe. I think probably some of the first, when I was first introduced to it, it's probably before I met Lee Sexton, who Lee plays mainly two finger, or
Yep.
played, as you know, he recently passed away.
Yeah.
Um, and the, long story, but I believe his hand got bit by a raccoon, and it disabled one of his fingers. So two fingers seemed to be the best option for continuing to play the banjo. Um, so he played mostly two finger, and before I met him, like a couple months before, is really when I got introduced to two finger. So that was great because then when I met him, I could really absorb what he was teaching me.
And you had an awesome teacher in New York who also sadly passed away. Can you talk a little bit about Shlomo, and then we'll get back to Lee Sexton and George Gibson and some of those Kentucky folks?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Shlomo, I first met him through a friend of a friend. It was very random and lucky. And, I was like 6 when I first met him. He definitely had a very Santa Claus appearance, big beard, white curly hair. And, yeah, so I learned from him I'm thinking till I was for 2 or 3 years. It felt like a very long time at that time. But I now that I look back, I don't, I don't think it was. Um, 2 or 3, maybe 4. I'm trying to put the pieces together. Sorry. Um, But yeah, Shlomo, learned like because I was interested in learning ukulele, we were learning strictly old time, but on the ukulele. So a lot of the songs that I play today, or began to learn on the banjo, I had already learned the words and the chords on the ukulele, and it's something about it. Like I would be interested in learning other instruments like fiddle, mandolin, all this stuff. Because in Shlomo's house, I could just paint you a little picture. You walk into his apartment and you have to squeeze through this small pathway, CDs stacked up high, like these these sliding closets, but like the doors were like slipping off because it was stuffed with cases, and there were like old photos of like postcards, antique postcards. And okay, so you squeeze through this, CDs and books on both sides. You get in, and then there's like instruments all set up around a room. There's like a couch that you have to squeeze in to get in the back, which is where whatever parent was taking me there would sit there. And then, I'd be surrounded by all these instruments. So obviously it sparked some curiosity, but kind of kept having to go back to the ukulele for some reason. It felt, I don't even know. But when he passed away, began learning some different instruments and kind of, um, I don't know. I wonder if I would have picked up banjo had he not passed at the time that he did. Um, I think I probably would have, but I'm not sure because I don't know. Something about the ukulele kept going back to it. But yeah, he really kind of it was a good introduction to the music because it almost felt very natural and kind of normal in a way because it was like not with a very unique instrument like the banjo or anything like that. Instrument you probably see a lot, but it was these folk songs. I would put it like that because it's how you would play a folk song, chords and singing. So I think in that way it really helped kind of introduce old time music into my life in a way that was felt very um, very normal, and to put it simply, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. So when I was at that age learning fiddle, one of the things that made a big difference for me, because fiddle's my first instrument, like ukulele is yours, is that my dad, who's a banjo player, would take me to old time music parties and jams, and maybe I'd play like the three tunes I knew as a 5 or 6 year old, and then I'd just run around and eat food and whatever. Did you, as a ukulele player, get to go to like jams and old time music parties and get to try those songs out in a community of folks in New York?
I would say, I mean, Shlomo definitely always pushed for that. And a lot of times when I was that age, I would be going with him to jams and stuff like that. After he passed away, and just before that, he like told my dad, "You have to take her to jams. You must take her to jams." And so for years, I dreaded going to them because I was like, "Do I want to just sit and play chords while these people are playing these beautiful instruments, all these beautiful melodies?" Sitting in the corner, And I wouldn't say I was really playing the songs I knew, but I knew kind of the I didn't know it like this, but the 1-4-5 pattern, and kind of use that to my advantage. I was like, oh, okay, it's an A, then I know I have to use a D, blah blah whatever. I've forgotten all of this now, but um, yeah. So it was, yeah. I think jams definitely helped me a lot. It was kind of a realization a couple years ago when I was playing the regular banjo, but mostly kind of chords and kind of plucking along at that time. But then I started just don't know how, but I started playing the melody with jam, which was a great experience. And I think, yeah, it's definitely helped me just, the idea of listening, even when you don't really know what's happening, listening. Mm.
Yeah, that's huge. That's such a big deal. So there's not like a specific moment when you became like a clawhammer melody player, like it was a little bit more organic of a transition from strumming chords to picking out those melodies?
I would say no. I would say it was definitely a moment. I
Oh, okay.
remember it very clearly, and I was like, "What? What?" Yeah, I remember I was at Miles of Music, this camp, which is in New Hampshire. A amazing, wonderful camp. People watching or listening should definitely check it out. It's a funny place because it's a lot of songwriting there, but there's some, old time music kind of mixes with it, and yeah, just kind of.
And
Yeah.
it took off from there.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It was then, it became easier and easier. But after that point, I kind of realized that there are ways to, maybe you're not playing every note that the fiddler's playing, but yeah, you kind of get close to that.
Cool. And then how did you get connected into some of these finger picking styles? Like I know you've had mentors, including John Cohen, and you mentioned Lee Sexton, and I know that you've visited and learned from George Gibson. Talk to us, given that this is a two finger uh, themed conversation. Let's hear a little bit more, and then I'd of course love to hear you play something.
Yeah.
What was the journey into two finger, and who can you attribute it to one person, or is it a couple of people who led you into this style as well?
I'm having a little difficulty remembering, but I do know that I'm gonna say I learned my first two finger song from Anna Roberts Travolta of Anna and Elizabeth. Um, I met Anna at the same camp I'm talking about, Miles of Music, but it
Oh,
was
perfect.
they call these things, there's these things called house camps where they kind of do in Boston and Brooklyn. They do these things like halfway through the year where the instructors from that area would meet up there, and ended up going, it was at Jalopy, and I ended up going there and met them, Anna and Elizabeth. And then I kind of started taking fiddle lessons from Anna, and I don't know, but I learned Shady Grove from her, which she got from Lee, which then I later relearned from Lee too. So yeah, definitely probably Anna, but I was also learning from like regular lessons from teachers, just local. I learned Shady Grove from her, which was like, it was very, I think it was like we're talking about. Two finger is, it's strange that that's not the first style people learn. It's very welcoming and kind of a great way to kind of learn the banjo. And I remember it being like sort of not easy, but like I felt it was very, natural for my fingers to do, not something like this, so
Right,
weird.
exactly.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say that's probably about when. Mhm.
Can you play us either that Shady Grove or something that's kind of early on in your two finger uh, development?
Sure, sure. Okay. Yeah. This is actually probably another early one. Here, I'm gonna scoot back so you can see the banjo. Um, this is one I did get from Lee around the time that I first visited him, and tune's called Rye Whiskey. Very, I would say it's a pretty common tune. You hear this a lot, but it's kind of I would say it's a pretty, I'd say it's a unique version. I can't say how different it is, but maybe it is. I don't play a normal Rye Whiskey, so I don't know, but I know it's a. Okay, I'll give that a shot. And when I get closer to the Shady Grove tuning, I can play that too. Okay. Well, the river was whiskey and I was the duck. I dived to the bottom and never come up. Rye whiskey, rye whiskey, rye whiskey. I cry if I don't get rye whiskey. I surely will die.
That's incredible. What can you pluck the notes of the tuning just real quick so we can
Yeah,
hear the open
totally.
sounds?
I have it written down too because I always forget it. Which is that's an E, C, G, A, D. This is the
Beautiful.
same tuning as Little Birdie. Um,
Yes. Yes.
that's the up. Yeah, that's the only other tune I know in that tuning. That's why I mentioned it.
It's good to have two tunes in any of these obscure tunings because otherwise you need a banjo for every tuning.
Yeah, I've yeah, yeah, definitely run into many, as all banjo players do, run into many tuning issues across the performances that I've done.
Yeah.
Not good, not good.
Have you
I've had,
written any banjo tunes of your own?
I have, yeah, I have. Yeah, I did one.
One.
I get afraid and then I don't do it. But I, yeah, sometimes a little inspiration will come to me and I just kind of keep it in the back of my brain. And then if I feel motivated to, I'll sit down and write something to it. But
Yeah.
that hasn't happened in a while.
What I suggest, just one banjo player to another, um, I've most of the banjo tunes I've written in a weird tuning so that I have more things to play in that tuning.
Oh, interesting idea.
Like I don't tend to write things in like double C or G tuning, but like, when I get into a weird tuning, I kind of want to have extra material, and if I can't find anything, I might try and make something up just so I can stay in that tuning a little longer.
Yeah, that's I think that's very good idea. I Yeah, sometimes when I've done that before, and when I've done that, and sometimes I feel confined to the other tune that I know, which
Right.
is not, yeah, that's the only issue. But you can, it's to step away from it is okay, but you just gotta kind of gotta feel it out for a bit, you know, to get a good idea of the options you have.
That's so true. So tell us a little bit about Lee Sexton. I bet most of the folks who will stumble across this interview might not have had a chance to visit him or get to know him. Could you tell us about where he lived and what kind of guy he was?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, his name has come up a lot in these first 5 minutes. But yeah, I was so lucky to be able to um, spend time with Lee. I think I been up to see him about 3 times over the course of 3 years. So usually it would be in context with the Cowan Creek Mountain Music School, which is a camp that happens in the summer. It's in Letcher County, I want to say, right near Whitesburg, the town of Whitesburg. And they usually, I was not there for the years, but that camp's been happening for a long time. And they would have people who would come, they would take a big bus up to Lee's house and everyone would go and meet him. But I did not meet him like that. Out of just speaking to other people and, meeting folks, I ended up going with another friend from the area. And yeah, at the time, yeah. So when I first met him, I came back telling friends about it. Like, for example, Anna Roberts. And she was like, "What did Opal cook you?" And I was like, "I don't know. She didn't cook me anything." She was like, "What? Are you crazy?" She like will she would get so mad if you didn't eat her food. And I was like, "Well, she didn't cook anything." But Opal at the time was pretty sick, and so I missed out on that part of their life, which I wish I would have been able to try the food. But when a friend brought some like food up to them, I don't know, I think on the last time I met them, and she was like, "You're gonna take half of this home. You're gonna take it home." So, very hospitable. Oh my gosh, such kind people. Uh, and I think that Lee's great teacher, and a lot about I think about like different kind of dynamics between like, well, it's interesting because my dad actually grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, so I have like I have a southern connection there, so I'm familiar a little bit with like it it's definitely different there. People call elders sir and ma'am, which we definitely don't do here. That's one difference. And along with that go many different dynamics between like a teacher and a student, which you may not have here. Like for my middle school and elementary school years, you call teachers by your first name, totally, which I know is very different there. Now, Mr. and Mrs. But I'm going on about this. But my point is that there's a difference there, and I think that with Lee, it was really amazing because I was able to kind of focus on just kind of listening to what he talked about and the way he was playing. There was a lot of listening involved, and I think that was very good for me as a musician and as just a person, to be able to you know kind of gather and store information without kind of I just think that listening is probably, one of the most important things when playing with other people and even playing by yourself, being able to listen to yourself. And even when I play banjo and we're making videos, my dad would be like, Nora, lift your head up from the drum, because my ear is always stuck to the side. Gotta be listening. So I think that, yeah, Lee's an amazing, goofy, and sweet person telling lots of stories about his life as a musician, and just life in general. Because he actually he lived on his family land up there. So the first time I visited, uh, he was moving around pretty well then. So he showed us around and showed us where he grew up and stuff. So that was very cool. But in the last few times I visited him, it's been a little bit harder to do that. So, but playing banjo all the same, you know, uh,
That's
loud
so cool.
resonator, and yeah. Hmm.
Did you get to play his banjo?
Yeah, I think so. We kind of traded banjos a few times around then. Uh, but Lee had some pretty bad hearing at the time, so I think he definitely needed the resonator to play, because you know you need something, you need to be able to hear it. But yeah,
Yeah,
so yeah, uh, yeah. I look back on the times that I've been able to spend time with him, and it's just I'm definitely happy for we there's some videos and audio recordings of just him talking, and just listening back to that is just a luxury that I'm so happy to be able to have. Yeah.
that is so awesome. Yeah, I my visits to older musicians are treasured memories, and there aren't enough of them. Um, and I
Yeah.
remember the same
Why?
kind of experience you're describing, where especially visiting Benton Flippin in North Carolina, um, he didn't talk very much. Like, he was a rather shy individual in conversation, and then his music was very present and conversational. And I don't remember I said too much when we were at his house, because I was trying to just soak it in and be respectful. And his wife Lois was there, and yeah, similar memories as to what you're describing. And I hope everyone who tries to play old time music and loves old time music has a chance to go visit an older musician, older than them, whatever that might mean,
Mhm.
and have that same kind of experience that you describe. It's a really beautiful memory. Um, did you and Lee ever sit down and he like show you a tune note for note, or did you make recordings and then take stuff home and figure it out? Like, was there how formal was the teaching process when you were actually
Yeah,
there visiting?
that's a great question, because it was not like lessons I would normally have, like a weekly lesson or something like that. It was definitely a lot of him just playing tunes out loud, and I would just kind of pick along slowly to the banjo. And but certain times they'll be like, Lee, can you play this specific tune for me? Because I really want to learn it. And he would play the tune and kind of go over certain parts. It wouldn't necessarily be like, okay, definitely not that. But it was, he would go over certain parts, and then I would play back to him, and he'd be like, that's it, or you got to get this. So he was a great teacher. But and I enjoyed style of teaching because it kind of definitely helped me progress as a musician. Because you know he wasn't necessarily spelling it out for me, but it was kind of challenging me to take in all that I could and kind of reformulate it into my fingers and play it back. So yeah, and I now have a few students that I've been teaching, especially during quarantine, because I definitely did not do this a lot before, and I kind of think about the way that he taught me and the way that I've learned from other teachers, and obviously depends on the person that you're teaching, but I try to incorporate that a little bit with like I'm going on now, but like, going a little bit, but then adding a note, but then seeing if they catch on to that and kind of, but anyways, yeah, yeah, I would say, definitely not note for note, but there was some
Yeah.
back and forth teaching.
And that seems to be a common story too of musicians of his generation and older. They themselves, a lot of them, the stories I've heard, they didn't get anyone showing them note for note, and so they had to kind of catch what they could and figure out the rest, like fill in the gaps after hearing an older relative
Mhm.
or someone playing a square dance. Um, that's really cool. Is there another tune of his that you want to share with us right now, or should we circle back to it? I don't know what banjos are in what tuning, so you can kind of guide us. But it would be cool to hear another one of his tunes before we wrap up in a while.
Yeah, yeah, I could play some of that Shady Grove.
Oh,
This is
cool.
where I'd have a little bit of tuning. But I wanted to add on to something because I've learned a lot from Mac Trainum, who is from Floyd, Virginia, and he teaches very differently than Lee does, which is interesting. And he was not as old as Lee, obviously, or so he's in a different group, but I still kind of associate him with this area because he grew up with the music and he's teaching mostly from his region, and the way he will teach is you got to have it exactly the way I'm teaching it, and then you feel free to change it to the way of your liking. But yeah, so it's definitely different, and it's not like it's different depending on the teacher or mentor. Yeah.
That's so true. My
Mhm.
fiddle teachers who are of Mac's generation, so like Brad Leftwich, Bruce
Mhm.
Molsky are the people I learned fiddle from when I was like in my like 13, 14, 15 years old and really getting into old time fiddle. They are very exacting, and I was talking to a student before I signed on with you. It's every bow stroke, every slur, because they're trying to communicate like, here's the way Tommy Gerald played Chili Winds, or here's the way Ed and Hammonds played that, or John Sawyer played this, and trying to get as much into the head of this older source musician who's not here to show us, but
Mhm.
there's value in both. And the first way, the Lee Sexton way of, pointing out certain bits, but not everything,
Mhm.
it encourages you to really listen, like you talked about. But then what Mac and Bruce and Brad do, it allows those of us or anyone who didn't grow up in the style or maybe doesn't have a lot of confidence at first
Yeah,
to really hone in and have one thing to focus on before they improvise a little bit within the style or try other things out. So
exactly. Yeah, like you said, there's definitely value in both. Can really it's important to learn both ways to expand on your knowledge and musicality. Yeah, that's what we call it. So it would be an F, D, G, C, D. Not to be confused because this is actually an F, not G. So watch out for that. It's caused many issues. Okay. Yeah. And I just thought of a really good example of how I mostly really I learned the majority of this tune from Anna, and then when I went to visit Lee, I he there are definitely parts in that part. There are definitely parts of the tune that I just played that are from Lee, but also more prevalently, that's probably not a word. There's a high part that he taught me, which I might struggle to do here, but I chose not to take that risk in that little part of it. But
That is
yeah,
so
that's
cool.
a great example of a little piece that he added to the version I already had. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard a recording of him playing and I think singing that too,
Yes.
but not the high part. That's awesome.
Yeah, he has a lot of those to different songs. So like
Really?
play the whole thing up the octave. Yeah. So people can see. It's up here on the 10th fret, 12th fret, 15th.
Nice.
So yeah, super
That's
cool.
why you make sure your scoop's not too far because then you can't get
I
that
know.
last note.
This scoop is already too limiting. It is limiting.
Tell us tell us if you don't mind about that beautiful banjo you're playing. I know you've got a couple, but what's this one?
Of course, I would love to talk about that. This is it's a Gibson banjo, like it says up here on the top, but the pot is original. It's around, oh, yeah, there's Lee's signature right here in the pot. So that's a cool thing. And yeah, Cedars Instruments made this neck here. And the pot is original because this used to be a four-string banjo. So this is a part of a group of, there are a few banjos that have this specific head, the snake head. And you can see this style on Buell Kazie's banjo and Clarence Ashley's, I think. Those are two notable people that I believe have it. See it in old photos, but I'm not positive. I think so though. And yeah, there's some cool things about this drum here. This part is hollow, and this was kind of this is not a trapdoor banjo, though it looks like it. A lot of people are like, "Is that a trapdoor?" But no, it's not. It's before the trapdoors, so it's like kind of before they started making shortcuts to kind of because it's kind of hard to make a banjo in this style with this like thick hollowed out part. And there's stuff in there obviously, but majority of it's hollow. So yeah, I think that's what kind of makes it's special. It's before that kind of cutting corners happened. But yeah, and um yeah, that's what I. Oh, also just some more nerdy banjo stuff about it. My action is very very low, and you know that's if you're getting into banjo, you're gonna want to go with the low action. You're gonna say, I want it like a bluegrass banjo because a lot of times people will be like clawhammer players, two finger players. Don't you want it with the super high action? Actually, that's a lot hard to play on. So yeah, that's what I have to say. I don't know if there's any more, but yeah, I think so.
I totally agree with you about low action. It took me a while to come to that point of realizing that low action is so much easier, especially as a finger picking banjo player, because I think in the modern old time community, there's this idea that clawhammer means high action, and it can work, but it's work. And my view now is put the action as low as you can handle it, and then figure out how to play any style that way. And then your intonation's better, it's easier, and yeah, I'm such a fan.
Yeah, I mean, like the reason why so many tunings exist is it's not like people wanted to play like they weren't like, oh, I guess I'll have to do this. No, tune the strings so it's easier and you can play it better and sing it better. It's about adaptation and that's adapting, and that's how you know the tradition really is. So people being like, you know, makes it easier is like a bad thing or something, but no, no, no. You know,
That's
it's all
better.
about so much better because you can express yourself better, you know.
Exactly. You're not fighting the instrument. You're getting to be an artist and say what you want to say. Now, you might already have a Gibson joke, but if you don't, the
Mm.
next time someone points to your Gibson banjo and asks, Is that a Gibson?" I recommend that you respond and say, "No, it's the Gibson."
Oh, wow. Okay.
Isn't that what it says on
Very.
your headstock?
It is. It does say the Gibson. Yeah.
Just to
That's a
clarify, so they're
that's a
not like it's just not any
no,
Gibson,
that's
it's
good
the
because there'll
Gibson.
be a lot of yeah, there'll be a lot of there are a lot of people like that, you know. They want to show off their knowledge and be like, "Oh no, no, no." But I also brought this banjo down because I thought maybe I'll talk a little bit about this too. This is a fretless banjo here. My dad actually made this. So that's pretty cool. It made this at the Camp Augusta with, so it was in a supervised class, but with Pete Ross and who's a banjo maker. And usually the stuff that you make at camps is not functional, but this is very functional, very functional. And yeah, so that's the story on it. But it's kind of a pre-Civil War replica, as you can see, and it's yeah, it's I love it a lot. It's you know, I love gut string and fretless banjos. I'm not a big fan of metal string fretless banjos just because it's harder to play and you have to be good at a certain style to do it. So maybe that's not fair, but I do like the combination of, the gut string sound with the fretless banjo. And, obviously this is not a new thing that I made up. It is something that people have been doing for a long time. This is kind of a earlier banjo, right? So yeah, sometimes I'm like, usually all songs sound better on a fretless just as a default, but obviously it depends. But yeah.
Can we hear the
I
fretless? Do you
thought,
have something you want to play
yeah,
us on
yeah.
that?
I thought I was gonna play. I don't play a lot of two finger stuff on the fretless banjo, but I got one, I think. This is a goat, excuse me, this is a goat skin head here. Right when it was fresh and new, I brought it to Clifftop, and there are a lot of dogs running freely around, and there are a lot of dogs that got very mad at me having this banjo. I was confronted many a time by angry dogs. And yeah, my cat's also like it now. The smell is mostly gone. But yeah, I was just gonna say about how skinheads are the best in the winter. I've had a great time playing it through this time, lockdown-ish time. But as we go into the summer, it's very unreliable and can be pretty frustrating. But there are ways to cope. You got hair dryers, you got blow torches. There are ways, but not very practical. I have a friend, John Paxton, you may know. He's a great banjo player, singer, multi-instrumentalist, and he told me a story about how to tighten his head, his skin head, he made a little fire in a trash can, and people the people running the show were like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "Okay, come on, I gotta tighten the head of my banjo. What the heck?" It's unplayable. It is. It's truly very, very unplayable with a floppy head. Anyways, let's do a little Birdie Mae's Chilly Winds. And this is it's another one of examples of tunes with common names but are a little different. And this one sounds a lot like Red Rocking Chair. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I think this is a Brad Leftwich tune, so maybe you know this.
I don't, but I'm going to learn it. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. It's a pretty tune. Um, I want to start like I don't particularly like the song Red Rocking Chair, but I always want to start singing. I'm like, no, no. But yeah.
There are some good Chilly Winds lyrics that aren't Red Rocking Chair lyrics.
Oh.
So that's worth considering. Like
Hmm.
Paul Brown, who's my main banjo hero, and not related to, I don't think, either you or me, um, but one of the many
No.
banjo playing Browns. He has a Chilly Winds, and there are lots of great lyrics that he puts to it that don't usually appear in Red Rocking Chair. So,
Oh, okay. Well, good to know. Good to know. I'll look into that. Um, I had an idea. Uh, maybe you have questions. Do you have any questions or anything? Okay. I had an idea because I wanted to just talk about this a little bit about the difference between finger lead and thumb lead. I'm sure you probably have talked about this, but I just it's interesting because I've done thumb lead until this like summer. I've always been very scared of finger lead, two finger playing. Wait, how should I say this?
yeah.
Finger lead? What sounds better? Finger lead, two finger. That sounds weird too.
It seems like a lot of people say like two finger thumb lead or two finger index lead.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the twofingerbanjo.com site starts with thumb lead, like where you started, where I started. But with more and more of the interviews and more of the advanced lessons on there, I want to grow into finger lead. So yeah, please give us your whole spiel.
Okay, cool. I do not have a big spiel, but I do have a tune that I recently learned, index lead tune, which would be Flowery Girls, which I got from Omer Forrester. Love this tune a lot. It is very hard for me to play in performances because I get very scared to play it. But you just need to practice it before, I guess. So I want to play a little bit of that because you get a funky rhythm, which is, the problem with thumb lead playing is that you can't really play the first string. So it's a super fun tune.
It's a
And I
beautiful
think that
tune.
finger lead is more fun, in my opinion. It's a lot more bounciness. Harder to learn tunes in that style.
Right. But you're totally
But it's
right. Like the first string is not really available to us thumb lead except for, occasional notes or every other note. You can't have a whole sustained melody up high in thumb lead. It's just impossible because every note would have to be on the offbeat or something weird. So,
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, and Lee for that Rye Whiskey tune, that's an example of kind of working with the thumb lead because there's a lot of first string in there and there's like a lot of pinching,
Yep.
which is a way you can work around it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so here's Little Flower Girls. Okay. There we go.
Beautiful. The first person I ever heard play that is this banjo player in Spring Valley, Ohio, named Rick Good, who was in the Hot Mud family, and he plays it so well, and he'd be so proud of you because you play it so well. That was beautiful.
Yes, I love Rick. We have the same birthday. I know Rick.
No
Yeah,
way.
July 25th.
July 25th? Oh my gosh. So I played in. Rick used to be the band leader of this touring percussive dance company, Rhythm and Shoes, that his wife, Sharon, she was the director and did all the choreography as the dancer, and Rick led the band. I played fiddle for them for a couple seasons, and Rick would play that tune in the show. That exact, the Omar Forrester arrangement, and he plays that about as well as anyone. And then I
Oh
hear you
my
do it,
God.
and that's gorgeous. No wonder you have the same birthday.
Yeah, that's where I first heard it too, on the Mark Schatz like compilation. I don't know if you've seen this, but there are a lot of this was like kind of one of the first like banjo banjo albums I listened to. But and yeah, and I heard there are a lot of great players in like Gordy Hinners and a lot of different styles and stuff. So that was very cool to hear when I was beginning to learn banjo. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking all this time. There are two more things. There's a person I want to ask you about, a tune I want you to play, and then a little quiz you get at the end. It's an easy quiz. Tell
Okay.
us, I know you went and met George Gibson. Can you tell us a little bit about that before I have you play Cumberland Gap, which is my other request?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I've gone to see George a few times, and it's been very, very awesome every single time. He is quite knowledgeable on, not quite, very, very extremely knowledgeable on all things surrounding Eastern Kentucky music and just in general, just traditional music. Obviously, he grew up with music too, and yeah, funny thing, people used to like when he was younger, people would call him a genius because he was so smart. So George got a lot of information, got a lot on subjects that I'm very interested in. So it's been always very great to go visit George, and he's taught me a lot of um, very fun versions of tunes. A lot of like yeah, I like for example the Shortenin Bread that I learned. It's like a funky up high on the neck, and yeah, it's it's interesting learning with George because I've learned a lot from John Haywood, who's a student of George's. So I'll be like learning things from him, and then I'll learn them from George, and I'll see the differences in the way that they play it. There and and I've also learned a bit from Clifton Hicks a while ago, but so yeah, both of those people learned from George, and it's interesting putting everything together. Um,
Can
yeah,
well, since you brought it up, can we hear a little lick of that shortening bread?
yeah, sure,
And then I
sure.
do want to hear your Cumberland Gap because you got me all interested.
Um, Let me do Cumberland Gap first because it's closer. Yeah. Yeah, so there are a couple versions to that B part that I forgot about. But yeah, it's a like a little bit of a play off of the normal version you'll hear, which, oftentimes like that Shady Grove and this Cumberland Gap, hard to sing to. But
Right, right.
yeah. Mhm.
Do you ever listen to Wade Ward's banjo playing?
Oh, yes, of course. Love Wade Ward. Love Wade Ward.
So
Yeah.
that he's my favorite dead clawhammer banjo player. And the thing about Wade
Okay.
Ward is that he has these arrangements of songs that you can't sing to, like his Shady Grove, which I teach. Like, I feel like there's a story that Wade Ward lost his singing voice due to the whooping cough when he was like a teenager.
Mhm.
And I don't know that if this is true, but I wonder if, if he came up with some of these versions of singing songs that you can't really sing to because he couldn't really sing to them. And so it was just more about here's a cool way to play it on the banjo, just the melody alone with no singer to be accountable to.
Yeah, I never noticed this that, all of I noticed all his songs are instrumentals, but I never really knew why. But yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wade Ward, awesome. I've learned a lot of his stuff through Mac.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's right around Independence and where
Hmm.
Wade Ward was from. Cool. Um, do you want to share a little bit of shortening bread before I give you this easy quiz at the end?
Sounds good. So this would be F sharp, D, F sharp, A, D. Ooh,
Awesome. That's so fun.
yeah, it's super fun too. I think it's a little better if it's faster. Yeah, but either way.
It's very catchy. And Shortening Bread is one of these tunes that more and more of us are learning that has a fraught racial history. I don't know if you know this.
I did not know that. No.
There's a list that has circulated among music teachers of songs with questionable origins, and I'm pretty sure this is on it. And yeah, it's the history of the banjo, as you know, and the history of American music is tied up with race in America and all the inequalities between different groups of people. But Shortenin Bread has been played by tons of folks all through the years, and if you're gonna play it on the banjo, that's what it should sound like, I think.
Yeah, I did not know. I definitely did not know that. I try to, if I have to play or end up playing a song that I know has a questionable history or not questionable or know the history.
Yeah.
I like to acknowledge that, but sometimes you don't know. But it's safe to assume that most everything you got is at least been played by a racist. But you can't really avoid that. But
Yeah, that's true, and it's a danger of us playing music this old in this country. But I feel like you're doing a really remarkable job of making this
I
music
hope
your
so.
own, and acknowledging where it comes from and learning from other folks. And it's a real treat to have you here. And yeah, I really appreciate you, and I'm so excited to see what you do next. And you have a new fan. Well, I've been a fan for a couple of years, but officially I'm on your fan list now.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this has been super great. I like, it's always fun to talk about this stuff. Yeah.
So before you go, you have a quiz that our first guest, Nick Hornbuckle, I inaugurated with him, and I just have to continue it. And it's a very easy quiz. There's no accountability. You just have
Okay.
to answer, and these might just be your answers for today. But in no particular order, who are your top five favorite banjo players?
Oh, can I do it in an order?
Order is better. So I was just trying to
Okay.
give you an out.
Okay. Okay, this is probably gonna be dead and alive. Whoa. My top one would be definitely Virgil Anderson. Support, represent, love Virgil. Um, another, I mean, okay, I got a lot. Okay, hold on. I want. Okay. Gotta say, I love John Haywood's banjo playing. Always loved it. It's awesome. He's probably one of the best banjo players I know. Um, and bouncing back to the dead, I gotta get Roscoe in there. Gotta get him in. Um, I definitely love his banjo playing. A lot of it is overshadowed by his powerful and amazing singing, but he's also a crazy good banjo player, and that's probably because he's sat for hours and hours playing the same thing over and over. Especially, I want to highlight Little Birdie on that. It's got an amazing version. And, okay. Riley Bogus, probably going to get him in there. Great banjo player. And, okay. Wow, it's all dudes. Dude party. I think. Mm, I know. Let me try to think of his name really quick. Clyde Troxel. Uh, Troxel brothers. Maybe you know of them. You probably do. No? Yes?
Tell us about them, because I'm not sure that everyone does.
Okay, so Troxel brothers are okay. I don't remember. They're somehow related to their sister is married to Virgil Anderson. Is married to Virgil Anderson, and then Clyde Davenport is somehow roped in there. Maybe he just lives near them, but I think there's some connection there. But they are Clyde Troxel, amazing banjo player. Highlight a song, French Waltz here. Amazing, not French, not a waltz, but a super fun banjo tune. And yeah, I love great playing, great duo playing, and awesomeness. I don't really ever go through five banjo players here. I really just stick with whenever I play a Virgil tune, I'll always be like, favorite banjo player. Virgil, obviously, amazing singing and kind of speak singing. Got all that bluesy stuff in there. And, you know, his style is just very unique. And that's definitely because of the many influences of different artists that he's had on his playing. He's mentioned many times that he was definitely influenced by blues artists, which is so obvious in his playing, and also just, I think, family members. His wife actually taught him a lot of banjo, I learned, too. Wild Bill Jones, a lot of the classic Virgil tunes. And yeah. Is there...
That's a great list. That's such a good list. And it's so different than Nick's. So with each guest, we're going to, on the interview page of twofingerbanjo.com, I'll have everyone's list, and I'll have links to videos or CDs or whatever. Spotify, I guess, is the thing people do now. But by the end of this, we're going to have a huge compilation of great banjo players.
Yes.
Nora, thank you once again for doing this. It's been a real treat. And folks, check out all her incredible YouTube videos. Get on her mailing list. She sends out extra videos that you might not see otherwise. And once COVID is over and everyone's safe to move around the country, go see her at a festival, or she has gigs in New York when people have gigs in New York again. Thanks to all of you for watching, and particularly to my Patreon supporters. You're going to get some tablature. I'm going to tab out a couple of the things Nora played and just post it for the Patreon supporters as a little gift for anyone at the $5 a month and above level. So know that that's there on the Patreon page. And yeah, tune in for another interview next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.